Devotional. God's purpose in all things. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to His purpose. In the midst of life's difficulties, uncertainties, and trials, this verse reminds us of a fundamental truth. Everything that happens, even what seems negative or painful, is part of God's sovereign plan for our good. This promise is not for everyone, but for those who love God and have been called according to His purpose. As we reflect on this promise, we will see how trust in God's purpose transforms our perspective on the situations we face and gives us hope and peace. 1. The promise to those who love God. The verse begins by saying, "To those who love God," implying that this promise is not for everyone, but for believers who have a loving relationship with Him. Loving God is not just a feeling, but a deep commitment to live according to His will. When we love God wholeheartedly, we trust Him and His plan for our lives, regardless of what happens. Love for God leads us to surrender to His sovereignty, believing that His purpose is good, even when we don't fully understand the circumstances. 2. The certainty that everything works together for good. The promise that follows is clear. All things work together for good. This includes both good and bad, times of blessing and times of suffering. Sometimes, we don't understand how certain events can contribute to our good, but faith allows us to believe that God uses everything, even our struggles, to make us more like Christ. Every experience, no matter how difficult, is under God's control and has a divine purpose. He is working in our lives to transform us and lead us toward His perfect purpose. 3. The call according to God's purpose. The last part of the verse reminds us that this promise is for those who are called according to His purpose. God has a plan for each of us, and every experience is part of that plan. Nothing is accidental or meaningless. We are called to live according to His eternal purpose, and everything we face helps us to be conformed to the image of Christ and to fulfill that purpose. The Christian perspective is not limited to this life alone. God is preparing an eternal future for us, and everything we experience here has eternal value in His hands. Practical applications. 1. Trust in God's love and plan. Even when circumstances are difficult, remember that God loves you and has a purpose for you. Seek refuge in His sovereignty and trust that everything you experience has a purpose. 2. Embrace transformation. Trials and challenges are opportunities to grow and become more like Christ. Instead of resisting difficulties, allow God to mold you through them to fulfill His purpose in you. 3. Live according to God's purpose. Evaluate your life and ask yourself if you are aligned with God's eternal purpose. Seek His will in prayer and action, and live with the assurance that everything you experience has a divine purpose. Conclusion. Romans 8:28 gives us a precious promise. Everything that happens in our lives, both good and bad, is being used by God for our good, because He loves us and has called us according to His purpose. This perspective transforms the way we face challenges, giving us the assurance that nothing is in vain and that everything has an eternal purpose. May you rest today in the certainty that, even if we don't always understand God's ways, His plan is always good and is working for your good.